Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mark Baber from Sony. We are here and we're just getting ready for the webinar, which will be starting in just over 4 minutes. So grab a cup of tea, grab a cup of coffee. We're going to go through the opportunity to look at Sony mirrorless if you're not aware of the range and the cameras that we've got in the range, and also looking at differences between maybe if you're a DSLR user and you're looking to switch to Sony mirrorless. So like I said, grab a cup of coffee. We'll be with you in just under now 4 minutes. So hello again, it's Mark Baber from Sony. If you've just joined us, I've noticed there's a few more people joining us, so that's great. We are here. We're just getting ready for the webinar that goes live in just under a couple of minutes. So grab a coffee, grab a quick cup of tea, sit down, and we'll be with you very soon. Ready to go. Thank you. Hello everybody, welcome, good afternoon, and it's Mark Baber here on the YouTube live channel of Wex Photo Video. So thank you for joining in. I've got a couple of multiple screens, so if you see me looking all over the place, it's just to make sure that we're all live, so hopefully you can all hear me. I've got lots of green buttons telling me that we're good. And so welcome. This is the Sony Shed, and since lockdown we've been doing quite a lot of webinars with retailers like Wex, bringing you live webinars about new products, some ambassador talks, things like that. And today we're going to bring you something around mirrorless systems. It's always good, isn't it, when you've got a brand new camera and to launch. Lots of people are interested in the new features and so on. So today we're going to cover really what is Sony mirrorless. So if you're an existing mirrorless user and you're not sure about Sony gear, then this is a good opportunity for you to find out more. If you're say a DSLR user looking to move to mirrorless and you're looking at Sony as an option, then this is a good one for you as well. And we're going to look into some of the key features. Now, we could be talking for hours, and I'm not going to do that. But we've got some key demos as well to show you what really is some of the best features of our cameras, and that including autofocus, whether that's eye autofocus in stills and video, and also tracking as well. We'll have a look at the overview of our cameras as well, what's in the range, what they do, where they sit, and that might appeal to you if you're a filmmaker, a hybrid photographer, stills, landscape, sport, etc., etc. Or if you're new to cameras as well, you're looking at buying into a new system, this is a great opportunity. And if you've currently got Sony gear, then this might be an opportunity to complement your gear with new gear. Okay, so I'm just going to check. We've got lots of questions. So this is live, ProGen. This is live. Hi. This is all physical television, a mobile stand, microphone. But this is all live. But it will be recorded and will be on the YouTube channel for you to watch at another stage. So as Wex have said, please ask questions. The more questions we've got, obviously the less I can show you some demos. There is some pre-recorded content as well, but that's great because we want to be able to answer questions. If we can't answer your questions, I will work with Wex on a local level to make sure that we get back to you personally as well. So I'm looking now, so please keep those questions coming. It looks like we've got a good audience as well. So let's begin. So let's quickly have a look. This is live. There we go. There's my hand there. This is our A mount system. And this is very similar to a DSLR, so I'm not going to sit here and bring some other manufacturers' DSLRs in. We're going to show you really the differences between the range that we've got here, and you will relate to the older technology we've got in this range, which is still current. And then you've got the Alpha full-frame mount as well. This is the A7 III, our all-rounder or our more entry-level. And since, obviously, we've brought this out a couple of years ago, we've had the A7C as well, so we just cover that briefly. And then traditionally, this is our APS-C range. So we've got full frame in A mount, and I'll explain the technology soon. Full frame in E mount and APS-C in E mount. And I'll cover more a bit later, but these two cameras here don't need an adapter to use the 57 odd native lenses we've got in our range. So before I go into more detail, let's just give you, let's get rid of that, so we don't need that anymore. There are offers for Sony by watching this webinar. So please take this website down. There will be a code that you can use against a selection of Sony products. So thank you for Wex for putting that together. And if you are sat on, say, kit that you are reluctant to get rid of because obviously the quality that you're using it for is fine, there could be an opportunity that you could move your kit over with adapters. I'll cover that later. I'll stress again, there's nothing better than having a native system on a native body. So for Sony lenses, Sony bodies. But if you are looking to offload some kit, then talk to the Wex guys in store, online, their customer service line. They do have offers to trade your kit in. And we're in a world of where not many of us have cash lying around just to spend on expensive gear. They will obviously work with you with offers like interest-free credit. So just wanted to mention that to you, that there are options to buy kit that you may not be aware of that obviously Wex give as a service. Okay, so again, what we're going to look at, we're going to look at the differences in technology. We're going to look at the cameras in the range with lenses, at the new additions of A7C, A7S III. That's a brief look. Then the autofocus demos as well, tracking. And if we get enough time, we'll look at some workflow. Just really, I'm not sure if you're aware, but you can transfer images from the phone, from your camera to your phone and your devices and so on, which you could add as your workflow. So I'm just going to check some questions. We're okay here. There we go. Tracy Wilson, just looking forward to this. Just purchased a Sony a6600 with great combination. That lens is so sharp as well. And the portability of it, no compromise in quality, which is great. We've got people from the Peak District. Livingston in Scotland, and Terry down in Hastings. I know that place very well. Okay, so let's have a closer look at the differences in technology, and then I'll break away as well and see if we've got any more questions to try and come back to those. So let's have a look now at the technology altogether, and like I said, we'll come back out. Okay, so we have side by side here an A7 Mark III, so that's the E mount, sat next to the Sony Alpha A mount. Now our A mount is very similar to a DSLR, and I'll talk a little bit more about the technology differences in a second, but this is what's effectively one of our first attempts at mirrorless cameras quite a few years ago, and still a part of our range, the A mount. As you can see here, it's quite a large bulky camera. It's got LCD screen along the top, and where I'm pointing my finger is basically where the sensor is sat. So the difference between the lens mount and the sensor, it's quite big, the gap. So the transfer of data between both lens and sensor can be a little bit slower than what I'm pointing out here, where the sensor on an A7 III or on mirrorless camera has far less distance to travel, so the data readout can be quicker. So you can see here that in size and weight, the two different technologies is considerably different. So let's have a more closer look at the A mount. So as I said, it doesn't have a mirror box or a prism that you find on a DSLR, which is one of the reasons why the cameras can be quite large. There's a lot of older analog technology in there, and as you can see, you've got a lot of hardware features on here. So you've got a flip-out screen, you've got card slots, lots of external buttons, and also lots of hardware connections where the flaps are there, headphone jack, etc., HDMI. So as you see, the light enters the lens, and I've got a better diagram to show you in a second, but the light enters the lens, and instead of hitting the mirror box and hits then the optical viewfinder prism, it goes straight through the mirror, and it goes in straight onto the sensor. So this is a translucent sensor, which effectively is very similar to mirrorless. And on mirrorless cameras, and I'll show you in a second, the light enters the lens and goes straight to the sensor, so there is no mechanical moving parts other than the shutter that's found in the camera. So in more detail here, basically on the left hand side we have a traditional SLR, so we did make SLRs in the past, and then by replacing the mirror box and the prism, what we did here, the optical viewfinder is replaced with an electronic viewfinder. Now, meeting a lot of people at events, this is obviously pre-COVID, that's part of my role at Sony, is putting all the events together, and now online. We talked to a lot of customers that are obviously very favourable to optical viewfinders, and the benefit of optical viewfinders is you're seeing what the mirror sees. The disadvantage of that is in dark, low light conditions, you can't see a readout of the screen and so on, and there's a lot of guesswork and capability in that. So by putting in an electronic viewfinder, we're able to read what the sensor sees. So as I said earlier, the light enters the lens, it goes through the translucent mirror, and it goes straight to the sensor. And that gives you a readout on the viewfinder, so that then you can see in lower light conditions, you can see the histogram, you can see a level gauge, you can see the readout of the sensor. You can pretty much customize it to the settings that you have with each camera. And if you want to use it like a traditional DSLR, then you can have the readout of the screen on the LCD screen, as well as looking in the EVF. Okay, so we'll come on to sensors in a second, but how this applies to mirrorless or our E-mount range is we've removed obviously all those older parts, and the light now will enter the lens, and I'll just cut to the second camera here and move these away. But the light will enter the lens and it will hit the sensor, and you can see from here there is nothing other than a direct link to the sensor itself. And as a result of that, and we'll come on to this in a bit more, that you can shoot completely silently because there is no mechanical moving parts inside other than the shutter mechanism. And the reason why the two images at the top, the red ring around the mount highlighted, is that the E-mount, so the APS-C and the full frame models use the same mount system. So the lady that's got the 16 to 55, if she didn't know, that you could use that on a full frame lens, and it crops automatically by 1.5 times. Okay, so the fact is you can use these smaller, lighter quality lenses on full frame, and likewise the other way round. So you can use all this whole system without an adapter. And then the diagram underneath just shows you the distance between the sensor readout and the lens readout. And the evidence is there that it has far less to travel, which means that on certain cameras, compared to existing range like A mount, the autofocus is faster, the readout is faster, the engines are faster, and so on. And as you can see on the left hand side, the APS-C sensor is far smaller than a full frame sensor, and we'll come on to more detail in that, but there at certain ISO performances and at certain resolutions, the APS-C can give the full frame a good run for its money. But one of the advantages of having full frame is obviously you can get a lot more glass, a lot more light onto the sensor, so they can perform, depending on what camera you're looking at, a lot better in low light. So let's go back to the differences in technology. We'll have a look at, I do have a question, but we'll just come on to that once I've finished this section. And we'll have a look at the APS-C and the full frame cameras in a bit more detail. So let's have a closer look now at the APS-C range. Now, the APS-C range is a smaller crop sensor. So the two cameras you just saw then have full frame sensors. So that's the A mount back there again. So the crop sensor offers you a variety of ability to shoot very differently. So the camera is very, very small. And with a recent addition to our range, the A7C now, which is a full frame camera in a very similar body, you can see again the lens positioning to the readout of, the sensor positioning to the readout of the lens is obviously far shorter again. There isn't any compromise in quality when you're using a smaller sensor camera in our range. So, for example, you get similar autofocus that you find on the full frame cameras. And the advantage here is it's so lightweight and small. Now, we'll come on to more detail in a second about the one mount strategy, which is basically one mount for all our cameras in the E-mount range, which means you don't need to use an adapter. You'll see here that obviously the sensor is smaller. So you've got pretty much edge-to-edge clarity here with a side viewfinder. You have a pop-up flash. On some of the earlier models, the grip is a little bit smaller than the A6600. And then you have the traditional Sony pull-out screen. Now, I know some manufacturers have flip-out screens, and I'm really pleased to say that in the last few editions of our cameras, the ZV-1 and also the A7S3, we've now got a flip-out screen. So let's put the lens back on, and you can see here that the lenses are a lot smaller as well. This is in the equivalent of a 24 to 70. So alongside now the full frame cameras, so this is the full frame equivalent, which you would expect you get shallower depth of field with certain lenses because the lens mount, the lens is bigger, the sensor is bigger than the smaller sensor, and you've got adaptations of lenses which we'll come into a bit later. So central viewfinder you'll find on the traditional Alpha 7 range, and a side viewfinder you'll find on this 6000 series. But like I said, you can change the lenses over. So the full frame 24 to 70 Zeiss f4 on the A7 III can go on the A6400. The fact is the camera will automatically crop. And you can see here the size of sensor. So again, with a larger sensor, you're able to do a lot more. So you could have facilities like additional focus systems. You could see improvements in dynamic range. And again, because the glass is covering a wider area, you're going to get more light onto the sensor. So there's evidence that the full frame can perform higher in low light performance. And there we go. We're changing over the full frame lens onto the crop sensor and the crop lens onto the full frame. So that's a real advantage if you're carrying a lot of kit. And I think now we've got around 57 different native lenses in the system. So it crops in by 1.5 times on the 6400. So these are pretty much similar lenses in focal length. And on the A7 or the full frame camera, it will automatically crop in, but you can override that. And if you did do that, then you'd get some form of vignetting around the outside. So let's put the lenses back on. Oh, I put them on the wrong camera. around the outside of the camera, you've got full functionality as well. So there's a lot of customizable buttons on the A7. And I'll come into more detail as well on the length and breadth of lenses. But we have roughly around 57 native lenses in the E-mount system. And then when you mix that up with the A-mount system, you've got very close to 100 lenses. So we have some questions. So that was an overview of the technology. One of the questions from ProGen, which Sony model is suitable for time-lapse? Well, a lot of the models do time-lapse. That was an update we did on the A7 III, R3, R4, I think back last year. And you're talking about the A7 III for low light. Yes, it deliberately has a smaller pixel count because it's letting a lot more light in than your conventional pixels. So please don't get worried about that, because the still side of it can push to ridiculous ISO levels that the rest of the range would love to achieve, and we're talking into the hundreds of thousands here. So have a look online. There's lots of information about that, and also with Wex, they've done their own videos around it. Yes, it is a more video centric product, but we're starting to see more and more people now starting to use it for stills and astro specifically, as well as gig photography and stuff like that. So definitely one to choose from if it is on your list. Thank you for putting that up, Wex, as well. Terry, are mirrorless cameras more prone to dust? Interesting. I think when I used to use a DSLR many years ago, I used to, after a long time, find little bits of metal and grease in there. Okay, you would get it professionally cleaned, etc. You don't obviously get that with mirrorless systems. You do get dust. You're absolutely right. Probably not showing you the right way of holding the lens, the body up with natural elements falling onto it. You can obviously clean it yourself. However, I would recommend that you get a professional to do it. But a lot of the sensors nowadays have wave filters over the top, so it will vibrate dust and repel off that. And the cameras also have a self-cleaning mechanism. Now, it's not the equivalent of somebody getting a swab and cleaning it, but it will vibrate quite a lot of times to repel any dust off of the surface. But again, I know there are kits out there. As a team, we're pretty confident when we're cleaning our own kit. But I would recommend, if you're not, then there are a variety of ways that you can do it. I would ask maybe the people at Wex, the staff at Wex, for the best options there. So thank you, Terry. ProGen allowed you to close the shutter curtain. Yes, only on some of the latest lenses. So ProGen's asking about the closing the shutter curtain. Yes, it doesn't on previous models, but some of the latest models you can do that. Okay, does Sony have a plan for 40mm? When it comes to things like new products, unfortunately, we can't answer that because we don't know. So we'll have to watch this space in the future, or if we make an announcement, you'll all be the first to know if we bring out new products. Okay, so that was an overview of the system. Let's have a quick look at the Alpha 7 III, because that's one of our best-seller cameras. It's very different to the APS-C cameras, the central viewfinder. So let's just have a quick look at that to give you an idea of where it sits. Okay, so we've got the A7. This is the Mark III. This is our entry-level camera, and we'll come on to in more detail of the spec. But you'll see on the Sony range, there's a lot of customizable buttons. So traditionally, you've got the mode dial on the top with PASM. You've got slow and quick, which is slow-mo, time-lapse, scene, movie. You've also got exposure value compensation. Back dial can be used for shutter or aperture. If you've got a lens with an aperture ring, then you can use the actual ring on the lens. You've got your shutter button at the front as well, which you can use obviously as a shutter or just focus. And the buttons on the back you can customize. So, for example, a lot of people tend to use the AF on button for back button focus. You have a joystick, a larger grip than you would find for your thumb over the A6000 series, and all the other buttons, even though they got dedicated functionality, you can override these and change them accordingly. And the most common use of dial is the back dial there, where you see disp and ISO. And again, traditionally you have the pull-out screen with the strap toggles at the side, and also the battery. So for those of you that are not aware, the Sony batteries are called the Z batteries, and they basically have double the capacity over the W batteries, which you find on the Mark 1s and the Mark 2s. So obviously this is going to improve performance, taking less batteries out, and also as additional accessories you can buy battery grips, which will take 2 batteries as well as the connector that makes the handshake with the body. So that's an overview of just the standard Alpha range with its central viewfinder, very small and compact in the hand, and it's combined here with a 24-70 Zeiss lens. So before we come on to the rest of the range, and that includes lenses as well, I just want to share something here. There we go, press the right button. And sorry, I did cut myself off earlier, so I was trying to say something. We won't go through every single detail here, but I'll go through an overview of where the cameras sit. So we've got the A7 III is an all-rounder. The A7S is the kind of camera dedicated to low light. The A7R is the high resolution, a really high dynamic range and detail. And a lot of people think the A9 sits at the top of the range. It actually sits in the top of its own range, and that's speed. So they're all the latest models sit at the top of each position in the market. And in regards to lenses, I mean, there's a huge amount of lenses here. Let's not forgetting again that a native side with a native body is the best way forward to get the best features out of the camera. There are other manufacturers that do produce our lenses as well. So when you add all that together, there are hundreds of opportunities to choose from if you're looking to come over from the system. From another system. Okay, so I'm just going to check questions again. So I think Jerome said about a new lens. I think obviously lens development is really important to us, and you've seen over the last few years us release quite a lot of new lenses, which is great. So again, please look at the list of lenses that we've got out there, and hopefully if something new comes, that's only going to be a good thing. You also ask another question: could you increase the depth of field when showing the product? I think maybe you're showing, if you're asking me to do that now, I don't have a product I can actually do that at the moment, but maybe if you join one of our one-to-one sessions, you can also book in every Tuesday with Wex, with myself. We may be able to do some one-to-one demos there to help do that. Okay, so I'm going to go into quite a bit of depth now with the range. So this is around APS-C and full frame. What our recommendations is, or what my recommendations are, where it sits, if it's a choice for you going forward, and also the differences in lenses. And I've also got some adapters there. So for those DSLR users that are looking to switch, there are some adapters that we use when we're doing events that work and show the best features of our cameras off. So there's an opportunity to look at that as well. So let's have a closer look now at the full range. And again, I'll come back out with some questions. So as we discussed earlier, we have the APS-C range, and there's an A6100 right up to 6600, and each one is very different for the purpose of using the camera. So our entry level is the 6100, 24 million pixels. It has the technology like animal IAF and human IAF, and has 425 AF points. The 6400 is more dedicated towards video, so this has things like slow-mo, it's ideal for vlogging, and also has the ability to grade your videos as well. So a good combination of stills and video at a mid-range price. A very fast autofocus as well. And then we come on to the A6600. Now this is a completely new design to the camera. It has the same battery as the Alpha full frame cameras, so the Z battery. It has inbuilt stabilization. It's a great hybrid for photography stroke video camera, and as I said, it has the double capacity battery that you would normally find on the Mark 1. So this is the Z battery. And also on top of that, it has a really good autofocusing system, which is very close to our A7 Mark III range. And as I describe here, that it has around 720 shots for their battery. Okay, so we'll come on to this in more detail, but we have an all-rounder, a sensitive low light camera, resolution and speed. And this is the A7 III. So this is our entry all-rounder. 10 frames per second shooting, 24 million pixel. It has inbuilt stabilization, a high raw files for video, and can focus in very good low light as well. It has 693 AF points, which is similar to the A9. You can grade and shoot 4K video. It has 2 SD card slots. It's weather resistant as well. We'll come on to that in more detail. So the S series, which has now recently been superseded by the Mark III, is our low light camera. Low megapixels, but bigger pixels letting a lot more light in. Excellent stabilization, so if you're using older legacy lenses for manual, the body kicks in. Since putting this together, we've now increased our range to 57 lenses within, so that it's got full capability of using in low light, and will focus down in really good low light conditions. So an excellent camera for low light. And the R3, which is now superseded by the R4, 40 or 60 million pixels, so high resolution files. Excellent dynamic range with one of the best viewfinders, sharp, bright, fast, that we have in our range. The autofocus is much faster than the R2, and it's a fantastic kind of landscape commercial camera, especially with the high megapixels shooting 10 frames per second. And the A9, this is our speed demon. This is the one that's recognized for fast speed. So 20 frames per second, blackout free, a stacked layered sensor that saves 276 raw shots to the memory of the sensor before it hits the card. So the readout is the fastest we've got in our range. The AF points are the same as the A7 III and covers 93% of the area of the sensor. Has superb algorithm calculations to give you the best speed and focusing we have in the range. So basically, the A7 III is your good entry-level all-rounder. Your A7S is dedicated to sensitivity, low light, astro filmmaking. The R is superb for landscape photography, high dynamic range, portraiture and architecture. And the A9 is superb for speed. So they're all sit very much at the high end of each pillar of genre of photography. So let's look at the 3 mounts with APS-C, full frame, and A-mount. Now, as I said earlier, you can't put the A-mount lenses on the E-mount lenses, but you can via a Sony adapter. The E-mount lenses, though, can fit on both the APS-C and also the full frame bodies. And you can see here just all 3 together, the difference in evolution over how we've managed to put, a larger type camera into a smaller body, and all are very capable cameras for doing a variety of functionality. And the one mount strategy just isn't for those cameras either. It is also for our pro cam cameras. Now, in our lens range, we have a variety of different formats, and the one I'm showing you here, the 35 1.8, is a standard Sony G. The next one is a f1.4 35mm, and this is the Sony Zeiss collaboration, as you can see here. We've worked with Zeiss over the last few years to produce high quality lenses, and of course the quality of both lenses is very different, as is the price. But if you're looking for something more portable to walk around with, and you're looking from more of a street photography perspective, then the smaller lens is probably much more preferred. Another common focal length in our lenses is the 85mm. So again, this is a standard G. This is the full frame Sony 1.8, superb center to corner sharpness, and this is the G Master. Now the G Master is a higher premium quality lenses where the lenses are engineered to such fine detail that it reduces any chromatic aberration from center to corner. Our engineers have done miraculously to produce this high quality capability. But what comes in, there's no compromise in quality, but there is obviously difference in weight. Same goes for the 24 to 70. So we've had this on the lenses, on the bodies earlier of the A7 III. This is the A-mount Zeiss 24-70. You can see, even though it's a full frame lens, the form factor of the A-mount obviously is a lot larger and a lot heavier. The quality is absolutely superb. And then you have our G Master range. So there's 3 varieties here. This is the 24 to 70 f2.8 G Master. A lot of people tend to use this for its focal length from 24 to 70, so wide to zoom in. But the quality of the lenses is far different. The f4 has a very distinctive contrast, deep contrast resolution, and the f2.8 gives you a really sharp, more natural look, as you would expect with the amount of glass that's in there. So those DSLR users that maybe sat on a lot of glass from another manufacturer thinking maybe, well, how can I bring my glass over? Well, first of all, if you're an ex-Minolta user with Minolta lenses or A-mount lenses, then this is the adapter to attach the Sony A-mount lenses to our E-mount bodies. This will give you autofocus and, depending on what lenses you use, also phase detection. So you can see here it does extend the lens slightly, but it doesn't have any compromise on picture quality or speed of autofocus. So let's see what it looks like on the E-mount camera as well. So we're going to just take this off. But as I was saying, DSLR users also have the option to bring their glass over, and it's an adapter made by a third-party company. And this is the MC11 adapter. So this is made by Sigma, and when we're doing physical events pre-COVID, we very much were taking this around with us because it was an adapter that showed that it works. And this was on Canon lenses, so I've got an old Canon 1.4, I think it is, or 1.8 50mm lens, and I can put that now on this adapter and put it straight onto the camera and get the autofocus elements as well as manual focus on the camera. There's no glass in that adapter. So I must stress, though, there is nothing more capable than having a native Sony lens on a native body. But I do understand that those have glass over time, that it's a big investment to move across. And if that's the case, then there are third-party adapters out there that you can bring that glass over. And here's just a demonstration of another Sigma lens. It's a Canon EF 35 mount, 35mm. Really good lens, really sharp, really bright, and the autofocus on here also works, including IAF, which we'll demonstrate a bit later. So the message here is, if you do have quite a lot of glass that you want to bring over from an investment point of view, then there are adapters out there that will enable you to have autofocus. But again, I will stress that the difference between that and native glass is. So we've had a couple of questions there, so let me just go back up my section here. So here we go. Terry Wilson, the A6600 is brilliant. Yeah, I have to say it's a very good camera in the fact that it's got the Z battery and the bigger grip that you'd find on the Alpha 7 range, so that really helps. So obviously the longevity of it, but also the autofocusing and the video files that you get out of it as well, and things like unlimited recording. So from a video perspective, it's a really good camera, kind of hybrid camera between stills and video. I think there's another question here, DSLR user Steve. Possible to put Nikon lenses onto Sony body? Yes, there tends to be more Canon fit adapters when we're seeing people at events. So I can only go by what we've obviously demoed at events and things like that. But I am aware there are other manufacturer adapters. Your best bet is to have a chat with the guys at Wex. I'm sure that they do Nikon to Sony. Depending again on what you're looking at, I'm pretty sure some do autofocus, some do obviously manual focus, but that would be reflected in the price. So I think if maybe Wex can throw something up, if they do have something, then that might be a good starting point. But I'm sure there's a lot of videos out there on YouTube and so on that will explain that if you are a Nikon user. But yes, as a DSLR user, if you're currently using Nikon DSLR, then you can bring your glass over with certain adapters. Okay, great. So yep, and there we go. Wex have put a link there for you as well. So thanks, guys, for doing that. Of course, we don't endorse these things because we obviously the native side of our system is the preferred option. But the fact is, it is a big investment, and other manufacturers have made these adapters to give you the option to bring your glass over. So that can only be a good thing. But with 57 native lenses that are tried and tested with our third generations of mirrorless bodies, including the APS-C, then that is our recommended way forward. Okay, so we could, like I said, spend hours looking at all the different features, but one of the key features that we get asked a lot about at events and online with one-to-one tutorials and things like that are how good is the autofocus? And well, I'm going to show you. So we're going to do some demos now on some activity in the with birds out in the garden, some of my kids as well. So just shows you how to access the modes as well, how easy it is. But the thing to look for here is how responsive and accurate and reliable it is as well. And I have to say that, you know, whether it's a mid or entry level, then you know, the autofocus system is excellent on the alpha range. So I'm just going to check here. We haven't got any more questions, so I'll just show you that right now. So we're going to look at the autofocus system of the alpha cameras. In this instance, the A7 III. So we're going to select the focus mode, and we want to be looking at autofocus continuous for this. So I'm going to take some shots in the garden of a bird feed table with some birds there. This is the menu system you find on the alpha cameras. Tabs along the top. One is for photo, two is for video, networking connection, playback, the briefcase is for other settings, and the star menu is to set up your camera to your settings. So I'm just going to go into the focus area and just make sure I'm set up correctly here. This is a live view of the camera, so another feature of our cameras is via HDMI to a piece of software or webcam software you can connect the camera. So this is what's going on with the actual recording of the menu system. So you can shoot wide across the whole area of the sensor, 93%, which is about 693 AF points. And as you can see here, I'm just making sure that the focus settings are okay. You've got the bird feed table, we've got a little bit of depth there with some flags in the background. And you've got the ability then to change the sensitivity. Locked on, think of it in layers. Locked on is pretty much the foreground, 3 is the middle ground, and 5 is pretty much the whole area of the subject matter that you're looking at. So if you want it to be very responsive, you choose 5. If you want it to have it pretty much locked on where I've got it here at the foreground, then between 1 and 2. I've got a live histogram as well. So the advantages of mirrorless cameras over, say, DSLRs is in the optical viewfinder you see what the mirror sees, and in the mirrorless cameras you see what the sensor sees. So I can select all this on the back of the screen and in the viewfinder. So I'm just selecting the media selection, I'm changing the autofocus modes, I can change the white balance, and I can have this viewed on the back of the screen like I would traditionally previously using a DSLR. You can see the exposure value changing as well as is in auto. So I'm going to choose selection, and it's got a level gauge and the live histogram there at 2500 ISO. There's another display button in the viewfinder. I can have an icon, a static person or somebody moving fast to give me the indication of shutter speed. So in zone, I'm now isolating an AF area. Here we go, there's some birds. So I'm taking shots here. You can see them going down on the top left-hand part of the screen. And I'm allocating a quadrant of the sensor to focus on. So bottom left here, center, top right, top left, etc. I then press a button that gives me crop mode. So I've got a 200 to 600 mm lens here. It's now turned into a 300 to 900 mm lens, and you can see on the screen it's dropped down to 10 million pixels. I've had a reduced autofocus area, but I've cropped in the camera so I can use this not just as a reference tool, but also to be able to capture the image. And then typically the bird flies away. And if I want to go back to that, I can customize that crop button to any of the function buttons that you find around the camera. Center is very self-explanatory. You can focus in the center and compose very much differently to maybe using it around the whole of the screen. And then you've got flexible spot, which you can, again, on the A7 III, you have 93% coverage. You can move the square anywhere around with the joystick and with the touchscreen. You can do this on the back of the LCD screen. So you can have more fine-tuned autofocusing. I can make that area small, medium, and large. Now, this is how I used to use a DSLR in the past with eye autofocus. I used to find the subject's eye, move the square over it, and take the shot. Well, with these cameras now, you don't need to do that with eye focus, which will come on a bit later. The camera will automatically find it. A lot of sports photographers use expandable, flexible spot. Say, for example, a rugby union game. The photographer's not looking up what's coming in from the sides or leaving the sides. They want the impact, so they can use the one touch area and the green boxes around it. Can sense it, movement in your hands, in your veins, your blood pumping through your hands. It can sense that. It can sense the movement if you're holding it, or if there's some movement on a tripod. And then the tracking area is really good when you're using that on the other functions as well. So let's have a look at manual focus, and this is focus peaking, and you can use different colors. So I tend to use red, but if you've got a red background, you don't want to use red on red. So as you can see here, I can zoom in. We're going to use manual focus, and you get this red glow, which means anything that's prominently red is going to be in focus. And as I turn the manual ring, you can see here it's out of focus, and as that color becomes more prominent, it's now in focus. You can see the depth of field as well in the image, that the background is out of focus, and I can take a shot. Again, if you want to use manual focus as a reference tool, I think some birds come along here, there they are, and I can obviously manual focus this in the same way. So as you can see here, I can't show the red color on the back of the camera here, but you can see that I can now get that Bluetooth in focus. Try again, probably fly away in a second, and I know that from there we go, a reference tool, I take the shot and I lose it, and I can go back to that again and manual focus. So a really good technique in the camera, ideal for obviously lenses that don't have manual focus, and you can see the detail here in the lens is really strong. So again, I'm just using this as a reference tool to demonstrate the capabilities of the manual focus. So what we're going to look at now is animal IAF. My recommendation, if you're shooting animals, birds, anything, switch it from human to animal. You go into face detection, and it's as simple as that, from human to animal. This is my cat, and you can see I've got a live histogram here, and the level gauge. I can change a few features again. It's focusing, and as the cat looks up, it will focus on the eye. If it's white, it knows the eye is there. If it's green, it knows it's focusing, and it will take that shot in that spot. Here's another angle. Can't detect the eye. It detects the eye. There it is. And now we've got that in focus. Take the shot. When it's white, it distinguishes it's there, but when it's green, it's when it's in focus. Same applies to IAF. And I got some further demos in this, but this is my son just watching TV. And doing a few things when I'm asking him to smile. There's my daughter. It's recognized their faces in the camera, and as soon as I depress the shutter, it brings the eye, the green box over the eye. So there's no need for me to go into single shot AF. It will do it automatically, and the responsiveness is huge. And don't do what I did here. You know, leave it in animal. It's not going to focus, obviously, because it's a human. This is my daughter, and even with hair over her eyes, it picks up the eye as well. And just to look at one of the images I took of my son, you can see how sharp it is in the camera. We go back to the image of my lad. There he is, and you can zoom in. Whenever you zoom in on a Sony image, it always goes to the sharpest point, and this should be the eye. That just gives you the EXIF data there, and we zoom in, and it goes straight into the eye, 300%. You can see in the camera here, straight out of the camera, no editing. It's pretty impressively sharp. So I hope you agree with me that looking at that, if you haven't seen the autofocus before with our system, then it is pretty reliable as well as accurate, and the hit rate can be very high. I think on that demo, that was with an A7 III. So please stay with us, because there's some cracking demos of tracking as well following this. And if we do get enough time, we'll show you some workflow as well about transferring images to your phone. There is a question, so we're just going to have a look. It's Matt Walker. Hi, Matt. Thank you for this. Would flexible spot be able to track the subject while continuous shooting? It's a really good question. On the back of the screen, you can control, obviously, where you want that flexible spot to go. In the viewfinder on certain cameras as well, you can move the autofocus on the back of the screen and see it moving in the viewfinder. But it won't necessarily, it will stay in one spot. So if you leave it in the bottom right hand corner, if you don't move it again, it will stay there. I think what you're trying to find out more is if you were to use the wide and the zone area, then this would give you more control on tracking. And you know, this is going to lead me brilliantly now into the next demo, because if you on the A7R4 and the A7C, the A7S III, the A9 II, I think the RX100 Mark VII as well has real-time tracking. And I've got a cracking demo to show you this, because when you're focusing on a face, as you've seen, it'll see the eye, but when the head turns, you get this icon that locks onto the head, and when they turn again, you get an eye. And I've got a great demo to show you that in a second. So let's have a quick look at that one. There's no more questions, and let's see how this performs. he says he's trying to look for his demonstration. Autofocus tracking, here we go. Okay, so this now just gives you another demonstration of how it can track, how it can find auto eye focus with movement as well. As you can see, the camera cannot find the eye. Even with the hair down in this instance, it can't find the eye. And as my son walks in, it's found it straight away. And all I'm doing is depressing the shutter on the camera. I'm doing it again here, so it detects there's a subject. As they go out of scene, they come back in. It's picking up my son's eye brilliantly, and I'm tracking. But if something goes in the way of the eye, it will affect the way it's focusing. You can see here with my daughter, it's doing the same. Picks it up from the side. As soon as it finds the eye, it's locking in, and as she's running towards me, it keeps it in focus. And as they move away, you can see here, as soon as I depress the shutter, it focuses on them, and if they turn at any stage, like it does there, it will go back to the eye. It's incredibly fast, it's incredibly reliable. Same thing here as well. He has a bit of fun with the paper. He puts it over his face, disappears the eye, puts it back again, finds the eye, puts it back on, and so on and so on. So you can see it's incredibly reliable, and the hit rate is excellent. This is the A9 Mark II, but you get a similar autofocus on the A7R4, the A7S III as well. And again, whilst they're playing on the trampoline's obviously got netting around it. So even when I'm in zone and focusing on the subject, it's focusing through the netting. It's ridiculously accurate and very, very reliable, as I've said earlier. But the fact is it goes through foreign objects as well, that here you can see that using the algorithms of the camera, the autofocus system, and the capability of its readout speed, not only can you shoot 20 frames per second with, say, our A9, but also accurately all times. So the hit rate is obviously quite high. So we're in the garden again, and we've got the 200-600 and the A7 Mark III, and we're focusing on the hanging basket just here really to show you the capabilities of the longer lenses and the quality of the glass. You can see in the back of the camera here is the basket from I think it's from 200, and we're going to zoom in, and then we're going to take a shot, and we're going to have a look at the detail in the picture itself. So with the A7R series, you've got 42 million pixels and 60 million pixels on the A7R4. So what we're just going to do here is switch off some of the noise reduction and make sure we're shooting raw JPEG, and we're going to go to high continuous shooting. Now, even though this subject is obviously not fast moving, we've got the ability here so that if it does move, that it will track it. So our cameras will shoot at 10 frames a second, 20 frames a second, and some of the earlier models 5 frames per second, and in continuous. The later models, the Mark IIIs and Mark IVs, will be able to shoot with autofocus, which is allocated to the shutter button. So in the menu system, we just want to make sure that we've selected track sensitivity, and if we're shooting landscape and portrait, that we get the same focus area rather than it's resetting itself into another position. Okay, so let's have a look. So this is at 200. We're going to zoom right into 600 mil, and you can see it's very clean. You can see the stabilization moving there, and that's the photograph and zoomed in by another 100%. So you can see that the detail and the depth of field is very, very good on a large telephoto lens on an entry-level camera, which is the A7 III. So you can also register faces in our cameras, and I've registered my son and my daughter in the order exchanging, and a few other people we might know, and I can make the camera know that my son's face is a priority. This is a younger picture of him, or change it for my daughter. You got up to 8 faces in this as well, so ideal for weddings and things like that, bridegroom, family members and so on. Or you can completely delete it and start again. And all you do is you capture the face there live, and it will register in. So on the back of the camera, as you saw earlier, there's a white box around my son's face, and then when I depress the shutter, it will go green. And all the way through this footage, he's completely in focus, up until that focal length where he's too close to the lens. But he does run back, and you can see the tracking on the back of his body. And when he turns around, it's focusing on him and nowhere else. So again, how reliable it is very good, and that's down to me there not focusing on him. at the time. But I did ask him to sit down and just give us a smile to the camera, and then we took the shot, and you can see the sharpness of this even at a telephoto range as well. And as you can see, when we zoom in, nice depth of field. It's about 300% zooming in, and I think you'd agree it's a pretty sharp picture straight out of the camera. Okay, so you can see we had some fun with that as well, and I forgot to press a slide earlier, so technology at its best. So we're getting to the end now of the webinar, and I think what we'll probably do with WEX as well is maybe do some additional webinars to concentrate on some additional features of the cameras that we just don't have the time to go through now. So we've looked at the overview, we've looked at the comparison with the older technology and the new and the latest technology. We looked at autofocus, we looked at the range, we looked at one mount strategy on the back here. So I'm just going to check if we've got any more questions. It looks like we don't. So we have one more video which is around workflows. So for those of you that use different software online, Lightroom and Capture One and things like that, you can always use our Image Edge software for webcam use. You can use it for a similar system like Lightroom to edit. And also, if you've got an Android or iOS device, then we have a free downloadable app called Image Edge Software, which allows you to remote control your camera. It also allows you to control the images from the camera to your phone, and then you can go and obviously edit that onwards. So I'm just going to show you a very brief overview of this kind of workflow, and then we'll finish off and see if we've got any questions, and we'll end the webinar in the next 5 minutes. So we've got an image, we want to put it on our phone, so you can transfer images. So I've taken the photograph with the camera, and I can send it straight to my phone. So this is an Android phone. This is just the ability to download the Image Edge software, also available for iOS platforms, and Image Edge software, and you download it. Once you open the software, you then make the connection with the camera. So we're going to open it up. We switch the Wi-Fi on the camera, and it sends a signal to the phone, and we connect the phone and the camera directly. So we literally go to send to smartphone function. We make sure proxy and original is selected, and then we send the image to the phone. So we're going to select that image again, and once we find it, there it is, we'll send that to the phone. The phone finds the signal of the camera, and it's back into the app. We select A7 Mark III, finds the connection, and sends the image very, very quickly, as you can see here. Then, if I'm working on the fly and I want to edit the picture, I can zoom in and look at the quality of that, or I can then transfer it to maybe some more software on the phone. In this instance, I've got Snapseed, which I use, and again, I can put that into filters, templates, anything like that, and upload it to social media really, really quickly. So Snapseed is what I use. Upload the picture, and you can edit accordingly, as you can see from this image. So that brings us to the final part of the webinar. I have a question, so we're going to go to Paras in the Philippines. So thank you. Concern on Sony is the high price of the lenses. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, unfortunately, I don't set the prices, but there's some excellent value for money in the range. And yes, and I think when you look at the quality and the amount of glass that's in a lot of manufacturers' glasses, then the prices are set accordingly. If you didn't see at the beginning of the webinar, obviously, WEX are in a position to offer their own offers. So they do have interest-free credit. And they also have the ability to trade in your kit as well. So you can offset that against purchases to help. And keep watching the WEX web pages as well, because when we do release new offers across the UK and Ireland, then obviously the retailers will be the first to communicate that, and that could be in the form of cashback and money off lenses and so on and so on. And again, if you do visit the wexphotovideo.com offers /Sony, etc., then there is a unique code there that if you are looking to purchase in the next few weeks, there is a time limit on those dates. Then you have the ability to take some more money off as well. So we're doing our utmost to support all of you currently if you're looking at obviously moving into Sony. But thank you for your question. I understand what you're saying there. Okay. Couple of other things. So let's have a look. Are you able to send and receive to speed lights, TTL flash, exposure compensation? Matt, I'll have to answer that again. Maybe if we can get Matt's details, I can send you some details around that directly. So I'm happy to pick up that separately. Very impressive kit. Heavily invested in Nikon bodies. Yes, it's it's a big investment when you've been with one manufacturer and many be looking to move over. But please talk to your retailer; they will help you somehow there, whether it's trading or interest-free credit, etc. So thank you for that. Terry, you moved from a Canon DSLR to 6600. Great. So I can see, obviously size and weight there is really important to you without using the quality, which is excellent. And your hit rate is way higher. So that's good to know. Thank you very much with that. And I think, again, one of the key features of the Sony system, I have to say, and I worked for Panasonic and used Panasonic for nearly 8 years before I joined Sony 4 years ago. And, when I was at uni, I've used Canon and other DSLRs as well, and they've all fitted my purpose wherever I've been. And now that I use Sony, I have to say that, the autofocus is something that, I haven't seen with certain kit that I've used in the past. And, for me, I'm an enthusiast, very, passionate photographer that takes mainly pictures of his family. And, the hit rate of getting the kids' eyes in focus is really important to me. And pretty much, across the range that does it, even with some of our compacts as well. It's good to see that technology come down to smaller bodies. Okay, that's it. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us on the Wex YouTube channel. I know this will get embedded, so if you are watching this again in your own leisure, thank you for your time. And please visit their website, the events site as well. We have lots more happening with Wex, with our Sony ambassadors and creators, and also more technical kind of videos like this. So thank you for your time. We'll sign off here. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you again